lots more to come. We're going to chat to Dr. Shakira Chunara shortly. We'll also chat to Naim Gina as well about the Brixton Mosque and the impact that mosque has made in the greater South African community. And we'll hopefully talk to Imran Chunara in Lebanon on behalf of the African Muslims Agency. So much to talk about there. But as you know, the Champion South Africa project is something I drive, and the essence of that is people, turning people into champion people, because champion people build champion communities. So with that in mind, we're going to speak to two champions today, possibly being the last or the penultimate show you that I'm hosting in Ramadan, right? One of them is Firdoze Bulbulia, who's done many things. I've certainly known her ever since I was a lighty and she was a young girl as well, just so that you know. But very importantly, she's an independent film and media and theatre producer and the director of Moments Entertainment and many other things that we'll talk about as well. So Firdoze, salam alaikum and good chatting to you.
Walaikum salam, Ashraf. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm glad we could talk to you. I know you've been traveling even in Ramadan, I think, to Nigeria and back, if I'm not mistaken, thanks to your Instagram post. I'm well aware of that.
Yes, actually, my husband Faith's father passed away, so we went to Nigeria. We had intended going for some work, and so it all kind of linked together. But I also attended the binational between South Africa and Nigeria in November. So it was really to kind of conclude some of the discussions that we had during that period.
Okay, and I think that's a nice segue into my first question to you, which I'm asking everybody on this feature. Is like, so how do you champion South Africa, Firdoze?
You know, I think whatever I do, South Africa is part of my life, part of everything. So wherever we go, South Africa is uppermost, is first in terms of the work we do. Also in terms of extended work. So for example, I started the Africa channel in Nigeria, ABC, Africa's Best Channel. And this came out of having hosted the World Summit on Media for Children in 2007. So it's really growing a network that starts in South Africa, but goes along the continent and always placing South Africa first. As you know, we talk about Ubuntu, I am because you are. And so to be part of anything, it really means that Ubuntu is part of what we do and how we live.
And how do you manage the consciousness about placing South Africa first? Because I've given talks about just that, linking your personal talent and your personal success to national success. You see, simply having the success alone is just for you, but to make the link. So how then do you regularly make the link and ensure that it's part of your consciousness?
You know, as a student activist, which is 1980, I was detained. And that was because I was fighting for an equal and fair South Africa. And it had to do a lot with education. And I then became a teacher, partly because I was looking at how do we empower young people, particularly in the area of education. I moved on to do drama at the university at Wits, dramatic arts. And then now, as you know, we're in media, we're in film production, etc. I think everything that one does as a South African is placing South Africa at the center. And then looking at how do we take the rest of the continent with us, because we are not in isolation of our continent. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes, and especially if we look at the kind of xenophobic attacks, etc., that's happening currently in South Africa, is that we forget that we're part of a continent, a wonderful continent that actually supported us during our times of strife, particularly during apartheid. So my very first trip to Nigeria, for example, in 1994, I learned how civil servants in Nigeria used to support the anti-apartheid movement automatically. Money from their salaries, like you go, pay for your pension, your medical aid, went towards the anti-apartheid movement. And so for me, a lot of the time, it's about saying to the rest of the continent that, hey, we think we're big brother, but we really do appreciate what you've done. And it's to try and level that playing field, to try and talk of a language of Ubuntu, to talk about who we are as Africans within the continent of Africa, and not to play big brother. And I think that has been quite difficult, especially given the history since 2008, when the xenophobic attacks started. And now, as you see what is happening, that's flaring up just recently, there is a huge concern about that. I'm also in the process of working on a feature-length documentary on refugees with the Turquoise Harmony Institute. And that has again shot a spotlight onto how do we as South Africa play a role in the context of refugees, especially when many of our liberation our liberation people lived in different countries, not necessarily as refugees, but literally because we could not live in South Africa at the time. So being an activist, I think, is really part of who I am and is my everyday kind of breathing, eating, doing. And so even if you look at, just my studio as I sit right here, I've got Zanzibar in the background because I hosted the Zanzibar International Film Festival in 2019. I always make sure that I have the Palestinian somehow, somewhere. So we remember the cause of Palestine. And we remember what Madiba said, just as we celebrated Freedom Day, our freedom is incomplete if Palestine does not have its freedom. So I think the passion and compassion that we have as South Africans stems from our history, stems from struggle. And it is through that I place South Africa always uppermost, and of course, within the context of Africa.
Well, I'm glad you do it. I mean, the word champion is a wonderful play with words because champion is a verb and a noun. It's a verb because it's you championing a cause, striving for a cause, and clearly you, in that case, you champion South Africa and you champion Africa. But when you emerge best in class, then you're also a champion at what you do. And I'm very comfortable, therefore, talking to you on this basis that you certainly a person that identify as a champion in both senses, which is great. How then? And I'm glad all the things you've amplified. I think it's just so important that you do that, right? How do you maintain, however, particularly in the South African context, a sense of consistency when for those in this month that I'm hosting the show, not just people of Muslim background, but many other social scientists, the level of despondency in South Africa, the issues about freedom, what is there to celebrate, is so pronounced. How do you then maintain your consistency when you also can't ignore the realities that so much in the country right now is actually going wrong?
Well, I think that certainly I actually have a colleague friend from Nigeria who is on an exchange at the moment. And he said to me, Firdoze, if we want to do anything in Africa, we really have to headquarter some of it in South Africa. And that was such a wonderful story of hope. And I said to him, please, can you emphasize that with the team of people I was with, especially the young people who were feeling absolutely despondent. We complain about the roads. Every time I drive down the street, there are potholes everywhere. We complain about corruption. We complain about all of the real situation in South Africa. And, this is not what we fought for. We didn't go to prison so that people can be stealing from children and babies and mothers and orphans. And when he said, he kind of reminded me about our strength. He reminded me about the fact that we do have quality people, that we do have the infrastructure that in many cases we do not have in all of the continent. And I thought when he said that, it just echoed again a reminder that we have to have hope. We have to push. We have to say that notwithstanding the fact that there are potholes, what are we doing to make a difference? And I say this to people, it's the starfish mentality. It's everybody who does one good, it's going to really, reciprocate in any other way. So it's really for us individually to do what we can. And yes, to call out corruption, to talk about it, to remind others that this is not correct, this is not acceptable, this is not what we wanted. But what do we do to keep ourselves above the water? What do we do to make sure that the children in our neighborhood are fed? That if you go across from Sandton to Alex, that people in Alexandra Township actually have a meal to eat, that those mamas are being supported. This is really what we need to do. So I think it's on a basic level of each of us taking responsibility.
And can one person make a difference? I mean, besides the romantic idea of you can make a difference, practically, can a person watching us now, can they really make a difference?
Absolutely. Each one of us can make a difference. You can make a difference by volunteering. You can go to the local school. You can go to an orphanage. You can go to the hospital. You can just in your street see who is, needy, who needs. And needy is not only about the lack of a resource around, say, food or something material. Needy is about, and we say this in Islam, you make a small dua, you say Alhamdulillah, you give charity, you give a smile, you show some worth, you make people feel good for the day. All of that is really helping somebody. We have seen now with COVID, mental health is such a big issue. And it's really just how people feel. You feel despondent because you wake up in the morning and you think, damn, look at this around me. Things are falling apart. But you have to wake up in the morning with a real smile in your heart, and you need to say, what can I do today? How can I get onto Ashraf Garza's show today and show up? Dress up, show up, and be there. And we can all do that every single day. You have the ability. And I love, Ashraf, you say that sometimes on your social media when you say, Alhamdulillah, I woke up today. Other people did not. And you have really inspired that. I think about that yes, we have woken up today. So many people have so many ailments. What can we do to make sure that we are part of the positive story, part of yours, as you say, the champion story? We have the ability to do that individually.
Well, I'll tell you what, sometimes even we forget what we do, but you've just inspired me to remember some of the small acts that we do that absolutely makes a difference. Before I let you go, I mean, just two things that I'll just amplify because it connects with your story about Nigeria. I think the Nigerian support and the support from Africa, the entire continent to South Africa, is important with regard to migrants. And I'll say that because something I've spoken about this often, when it comes to the people of Mecca and when they were persecuted and they had to go to Medina, they were migrants, they were refugees. And the people of Medina effectively welcomed them into their homes. That is, if we follow the Sunnah, that's the Sunnah. Well, that's point one. Point two, from an African perspective, and you made the point about Nigeria, but the first continent and therefore the first country that accepted refugees, Muslim refugees, was Abyssinia, as you know, Ethiopia. So the tradition of opening doors to refugees is an established part of Islamic tradition, and it's something, as you and I wrap up now, that we all need to remember.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And I think it is in that context of how do we actually define the word, refuge, to seek refuge. That is what refugee is. And when people come, they do not come because they just want to, arrive at your door and mess up your home. They come because there's a great sense of need. I mean, if we looked at just recently the amount of people who are drowning on these boats going, on the Mediterranean. Really, do you think a mother wants to take her child, her beloved child, and cross an ocean knowing that you may not actually succeed? That has to tell you the depth of despair, of why it is necessary for us to help, to open our minds, to create that champion spirit that you talk about, to really feel for our neighbor and Ubuntu. And at a time like this in Ramadan, Ashraf, is really an opportunity to reset, to restart, to consider what it is that we can do and how we can change the narrative.
Well, am I inspired? Absolutely, and you've inspired us. Appreciate your time. Therefore, Firdoze Bulbulia or champion South African Firdoze Bulbulia. Great chatting to you. Looking forward to that the refugee broadcast that you're going to put together with the Turquoise Harmony Institute. For those who don't know, that's the organization that effectively governs the Nizamiya Mosque in Madrid, the Turkish mosque that we spoke about earlier on this month. Firdoze, salam alaikum, Eid Mubarak in advance.
Thank you. Alaikum salam. Eid Mubarak to you too.
There we are. Fascinating. And you should be inspired. We'll speak to another champion, Dr. Shakira Chunara, after this.